are going to see two glands. There are two glands in the brain. One is outside, one is inside. Anybody what's outside the brain? Pituitary gland. That hangs from the hypothalamus, okay? Like this. Normally it is gone, so you won't find any of those, all of those from your models here. Because they are very delicate. The model also, it starts walking away, so they put this in the box if somebody needs. When you put the model together, there's a place where you can stick them in. It looks like a little candy. Okay? In the actual brain also, it easily comes up. Your sella turcica, if you remember in the skull, that's what the sphenoid bone, the sella turcica protects this gland, the depression. So, this is your pituitary gland. So, if the question is name the gland outside the brain, there's only one gland outside. So, you see it like a bump. They call it pituitary gland. And the structure, basically hypothalamus secretes hormones. They pass through the this little stalk and reach the pituitary gland and activate that to produce more hormones. These are all the glands that control your growth. Okay, so this piece is like a straw that you use for a soda, to sip a soda. That's called infundibulum. That also easily breaks off. So when you break this off, you'll see only a passage, you won't see the stuff. Alright. The other gland, the second gland is in the midbrain. So there'll be a gland in this area they call epithalamus, but we don't use it for the lab. This is hypo, below the thalamus. This is above the thalamus, so it's epithalamus. But it is taken up by a pine cone shaped gland. Looks like a pine cone. So what's the name of the gland? Pineal gland.
Septum pillow.
That's your pineal gland. So if you see the gland in the midbrain, any gland, the question is asking about the gland inside, pineal gland, outside, pituitary gland. That's not a good way to learn, but it's an easy way to remember. But you have to know which actually is your pituitary versus pineal gland. Yes? Right here. It's a little bit above the thalamus and behind the thalamus. It looks like a pine cone. Alright. Then you have tiny, teeny spaces within the brain where we produce a fluid that protects, lubricates, and maintains your brain. Anybody knows the name of that fluid? Cerebrospinal fluid, not cerebral. Cerebro, think of your brother if you have a bro. Okay, cerebrospinal fluid. Because this entire structure is cerebrum, so the fluid that forms is the cerebrospinal fluid. That fluid forms in this space. First of all, we have to understand the little tiny spaces where this fluid forms and flows. So any space within the brain we call ventricle. Okay. So first, let me introduce you to the ventricle. So there is a one large space that you see between your thalamus and corpus callosum on your model. Can you see a little space there? Mm-hmm. The model is not very deep, but in the actual specimen you can see that. So this is your fourth ventricle. When the brain forms, they have four ventricles. They call it 1, 2, 3, 4. But later on, the 1 and 2 becomes your. Sorry, I have to remove that. Okay, the first and second becomes lateral ventricle. The fourth is somewhere else. So there is one lateral ventricle on the right, one on the left. So those were the first and second. Then the CSF that forms and fills all these lateral ventricles. Then it flows, if you can follow my dots, between your thalamus and hypothalamus. You see that? You won't be able to see the passage very, very well like you would, but you can trace it with a pin or something. I'll show you. Then it goes down like this, and then it goes to the space between there is a V-shaped cut space here. It goes there, and then it comes outside to the surface of the brain. Where it is So we have more ventricles. This is your third ventricle. That is, it starts from somewhere here, okay? From somewhere here, goes between your thalamus, hypothalamus, and this is your fourth ventricle. Oops. This is your fourth ventricle between your cerebellum and the stem of the brain. And connecting the third to the fourth is a passage they call aqueduct, cerebral aqueduct. So you have to understand the story. You form the CSF in the lateral ventricle, it flows through the third ventricle, through the cerebral aqueduct, to the fourth ventricle, then it gets out to the surface of the brain. But then, if you see here on the surface of the brain is protected by three layers. We call the layers meninges. The outermost layer is your, like in the spinal cord, what did we call that? What protects the spinal cord? Dura mater. M-A-T-E-R. No two T's. Okay. The next layer is your arachnoid matter that is kind of difficult to see because it's so thin. It's on the other side, like my palm. This side is dura mater. Let's take, this is my brain. I put my palm on top of that. That's my dura mater. That's my arachnoid matter. Okay. And the third layer is the brain itself, the surface of the brain itself. We call it pia mater. So if you read backward the first letter of all these, it goes like PAE, like a protective pad that protects your brain. Okay, so pia mater, arachnoid mater, dura mater, or dura, arachnoid, pia mater. So they all have some tiny, teeny spaces that protect the brain. So if something is below or above, we use the term sub or epi. Sub means, sometimes we use hypo, right, or inferior. But sub also means something like that. So if it is below the dura mater, it will be subdura mater. Above the dura will be epidura mater. So what will you call that space where we find the fluid below the arachnoid mater? What will you call that space?
Ventricle.
It will be called a space, but I just explained something is above, below, what you should use. Epi cannot be below. Epi is above. So subarachnoid space. Okay. So the subarachnoid space is between the arachnoid and the pia mater. Okay. So subarachnoid space is where the fluid will end up. It starts in lateral, third, goes to the aqueduct, cerebral aqueduct, fourth ventricle, then it will go to the subarachnoid space, which is between the actual brain and that layer, right? So that's where it protects the brain. So if you have watched the movie Concussion, you know what we are talking about. So the fluid is helpful only so much, but if you do the head-to-head collision or your head hits something too hard in the wrong way, wrong place, then you have serious issues. Alright, so those are the meninges. The dura mater in the human brain, we will see that it gets a special name when it goes into the longitudinal fissure. I will rather show it to you on model specimen when we go to it. Cerebrospinal fluid. Cerebro. Don't worry about the spelling and all of that now, okay? Whatever you looked up or you'll have all the time, because otherwise I will be here till 3 o'clock. Because you will have time to look up and make sure you do it yourself, okay? Otherwise I'm losing myself here. But this is supposed to be an overview, don't make it teaching. It's already become too late than what I thought. Alright. Now if you see the inferior view, We look at the brain from the bottom. Okay. If you see in the front, you see a bulb that comes basically from your nose. If you can orient where the nose of the sheep or the human should be in relation to the brain, it comes right underneath. So your brain is here, right? So it comes from your nose right underneath here. So if you touch there, you'll see something white on the anterior end of the brain. And somebody see the bulb-like structure? Yeah, the bottom but in the front. So they call it olfactory. Remember olfactory nerve that helps to smell? So this is basically the nerve ending. Okay, that becomes like a bulb, so they call it olfactory bulb. The path is called the tract, olfactory tract. Then, if you have only one piece, you will see half of this. Otherwise, if you put them together, if you want, you can quickly put them together and take it back from the other person. You will see an X, the crossover. The crossover point, this is for your optic nerve. So the optic nerves from the eye, when they come, they cross over and go to the back of the brain. So they call the crossover point optic chiasm, sometimes chiasma. And this is the path of the nerve, so they call it optic tract. And if you have the pituitary gland intact, okay, you will see a big bump here. You won't see anything else. So that means the bump is your pituitary gland in this view. That's the lateral view, by the way, right? You flipped over and you're looking at the bottom. So if it is missing, then you will see some more structures. You will see a little passage and a little round structure, okay? So you cannot see that well in the model. We may have to do it in the actual specimen. So the passage you see is what you saw as infundibulum. So that's your infundibulum, because your pituitary gland is removed with the stalk. And this is your mammillary body. This is the beginning of pons, that's your medulla oblongata, spinal cord down there. Okay. Then the surface of the brain, if you see, they divide into different sections called lobes anatomically. Physiologically, we call it cortex. The cortex regions correspond to various functions of your brain. That's for the lecture. So the lobes go luckily with your skull bones. So what will you call this one? Frontal lobe. Occipital lobe. Parietal. Below that on the side will be temporal lobe. There are 5 lobes. One you cannot see, so that is deeper to the temporal lobe, that is insulated from the outside. Why I said that? The name itself is insula, as in insulation. Okay, that's the 5th lobe. So you don't have to worry about it, but you need to be aware there are 5 lobes for the lecture. So we'll see 4 lobes. Frontal, parietal, on the side, temporal, occipital lobe. Okay, there are some more structures inside. When you flip the cerebrum and cerebellum apart, and you take them apart, you will see that we will see with the e-book. Okay, so let's go to the e-book.